So why don't we go ahead and get started, and then as people can join us, we'll see the participant list grow. Good evening, everyone. I'm Monica Zoltansky. I'm council member for District 4 in Sandy, and I'd like to welcome you to our first ever virtual town hall. Really excited to be here tonight, and thank you all for joining us. It is so important to hear from our residents, and we're pleased to have my council colleagues, Brooke Christensen and Zach Robinson, join us, and we'll do introductions. Also, Mayor Bradburn, department heads, Police Chief Greg Severson, Fire Chief Bruce Klein, and Nick Dirksen, our Economic Development Director, along with our council staff. So once I just do this quick introduction, I'll have everyone go through, say hello, and to the department heads, if you would just kind of give a preview, please, of the topic that you'll be covering tonight. Like many things we're all dealing with, this is new for us, and so this process of meeting virtually rather than in person is new to us. We're not anticipating any problems, but if there are technical or other problems tonight that prevent us from continuing, we really don't have a default. We just will have to drop off. But if we have to, we will reschedule this. But hopefully everything goes smoothly. And with that, I'd like to turn to my council colleagues for an introduction and then from administration. Brooke.
I'm Brooke Christensen. I represent District 1, which is from like 80th South to 114th, and then anything west of 7th East.
Thanks. Zach?
My name is Zach Robinson. I am City Council member at large. I'm one of 3 at-large members, so our district is the city borders.
Thank you. Mayor Bradburn?
Hi, I'm Mayor Bradburn, and it's my honor and privilege to serve as your mayor for the last 2.5 years. And my job is to operate the city, so I have the privilege of overseeing all of our department heads and operations.
Thanks.
I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. Chief Severson.
Hi, my name's Greg Severson. I'm the chief of police, so I'm fairly new. I was appointed and sworn in on March 7th, and proud to serve Sandy. I've been here for 24 years, and I'm here to talk about some of the changes and preparedness of this pandemic tonight. So happy to be here.
Thanks. Chief Klein.
Hi, I'm Bruce Klein. I've been the fire chief for over 6 years. Been with the department a little over 7, and I'm just happy to be here tonight. And I'll be talking about how the fire department is responding to the pandemic also, and how we're handling that and their welfare.
Thank you. And Nick?
Hi, I'm Nick Dirksen. I'm the Economic Development Director for Sandy, which is I do business recruitment, retention, marketing with the city, and then I'm also the director of the Redevelopment Agency, which is the tool we use for development projects and economic development in the city. And obviously the impacts of COVID-19 on our economy are huge. So I'll be here to answer any questions you may have that way, but a fair amount of time spent working with businesses, helping them get through this has been the long chore of late. So I've been with the city 27 years and thoroughly enjoyed working for Sandy all these years.
Thank you. Mike?
Good evening. I'm Mike Applegarth. I'm the Council Office Director, and I'll be your pilot for tonight at the Zoom webinar controls. It's quite a busy screen. This is the first time we've done a town hall this way, as Councilmember Zoltansky mentioned. Forgive me for looking down. I have 2 screens going on, one trying to view you, and 2 below me trying to manage the controls. And as we get into the conversation, I think we'll hear from our department heads and council members and the mayor. We'd like to try to keep this conversational as well. If you see me trying to promote you to a panelist, you can go ahead and accept that if you're comfortable being seen on screen. If not, you can stay muted. If you need to be seen or heard and you just don't have the permissions, feel free to send me something in the Q&A box, or you can use the raise hand feature as well, and I'll be able to give you those audio and video controls. So welcome, everybody.
Thanks. And then if you are listening, in a listening mode, you can change your mute. You can set your screen to mute so it won't pick up every background noise or any cough or sneeze. And then also our format tonight, we're going to first hear from our presenters and then open it up for Q&A, and anything is on the table. So if you've got questions about any aspect of city life, but specifically tonight, our department heads are going to talk about the COVID response. You're welcome to just ask that you hold your questions until after our presenters. So with that, I'd like to start with Chief Severson.
Okay. Obviously, this is a first for all of us, and I think that probably Chief Klein and I are probably going to cover some of the same topics, but when this pandemic first hit, the immediate thing that the police department tried to do is we're an essential service, right? We have to be here. Public safety is number one priority. So the first thing we had to do is split our police department basically in half. I know a couple of my captains, John Arnold and Mark Soper, are on here. I haven't seen a couple of them in a month because we just basically separated everybody. Anybody that could work from home at that point in time, including our detectives, were assigned to work from home. If possible, they're like able to come into the office if they have to do an interview or something to that effect. Luckily, most of the people in our police department have some form of laptop that they can work from home. And the present administration has done an outstanding job of preparing the police department with like Office 365 and that kind of thing, so that we could make that happen in a very quick manner. IT did an awesome job of preparing us. So I'm happy to say that all our office staff and our detective divisions are working from home. The only people that really you'll see around the department around on the street are patrol officers. With that, we went and we were very well prepared for personal protective equipment. Prior to this, from the SARS outbreak, we'd stockpiled a couple thousand N95 masks. We always have gloves and Tyvek suits, which are the plastic suits. Every officer has been outfitted with PPE from the onset of this pandemic. We've had the EOC, State EOC Center and County EOC Centers reach out to us to see if we need PPE. We've been happy to tell them that we're very well prepared to respond to the pandemic. So those are kind of some of the personnel changes. We implemented a COVID exposure protocol so that if one of our officers gets exposed or has to wrestle somebody into handcuffs that gets exposed, we have a process and a decontamination station here at the city that we could get them through, get their equipment cleaned, get their uniforms cleaned, get their vehicle cleaned, and then get them back to work after they quarantine for 14 days. So we have that in place. And then, as I said before, working from home, we've moved to online trainings and online meetings through Office 365 Teams and things like Zoom that seem to have worked well for our police department. So that's our personnel, how we've been handling personnel. What does that mean for service to our community? Well, you've probably noticed that the entire city has been shut down. We've closed down our lobbies here at the police department, down in Animal Services, but we still are able to provide most of the services that we were before, just online. So we've implemented a phone tree. So if you call in during business hours, you'll be put into a phone tree. It'll direct you to the people that you need to speak with so that we can handle your problems, or handle your situation, whether that be pet licensing or sex offender registry or things like getting a police report. We can take care of most of that stuff online. How are our police officers handling calls for service? So one of the things that we've done is to try and maintain social distancing. Is that when we get a call for service now, we've directed our police officers to try and handle it by phone rather than responding if they can do that. If it is an emergency situation or a call that requires response, our officers will respond, but they will be wearing PPE, gloves, masks, that kind of thing, and they will try and handle the call outside and to maintain that social distancing. If they make a traffic stop, because they still are out there doing proactive police work. Crime doesn't stop. Then they will try and make something like a passenger side approach to the vehicle to maintain that distancing. We try not to hold documents or take documents from people because we have the means through technology to confirm people's identities. And then something that we're also doing is that we're trying to take more of an educational stance during this tough time, where we're not just, rather than doing enforcement, we're trying to educate people on things. So we know it's a tough time for people. So those are some of the things that the police department has gone ahead and implemented. We have noticed that we have seen a significant drop in calls for service. They're down about 5%. Our traffic crashes, because not so many people were driving, are down over 50% over the past month. However, domestic violence has been a problem. We are starting to see an increase in that. We're sitting at about a 20% increase from past years. So that's a police report, and I'll wait for further questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Chief Klein, please.
Thank you again for letting me be a part of this town hall, and this is a first for me also. When the mayor first got elected, he had us come to a few town halls, and I think there's a better turnout tonight than at your town halls, mayors. So maybe it's because Nick and Greg are here. So
There's no need to get into crowd size here, Chief.
Some of the things that we've been doing as a fire department are similar to what the police department has been doing with their staff and the way we're handling our calls. But I first want to shout out to my firefighters that are coming in every day, staffing the stations, similar to how Greg's people are staffing the patrol cars. But it's them that I need to thank, that are coming out and going on these calls and putting themselves not in danger of getting hurt, but in danger of getting sick. So thank you for doing that, firefighters, and the families for supporting them. I know that I've had some that have said, well, my wife doesn't want me coming home, and so we've made some arrangements, if that happens, that we can put them up in hotels and places, so their families are also safe. And I know that that's also available to the police department. When we first the COVID, was brought up, the city was way ahead. I believe we held some meetings really soon when we started hearing about this and started making some pre-planning. And the fire department, police department, and all the departments were there thinking, well, what do we need to do to prepare for this? Some of those things were, we couldn't split our staff because we have to maintain our staffing at all of our stations. But we took precautions, like Greg said, with issuing them all their safety glasses and gloves, face masks, 2 different type depending on the call, and then they also have a gown that they will wear when they respond. So then we issued some orders and directives that anytime they go on a sick patient and that had respiratory or any type of symptoms that would go along with the virus, that they would take all the precautions as needed. One thing that we did that the crews really liked is I told them that they could wear T-shirts and not to wear their nice uniforms, just because it was easier to come back and launder those and having to contaminate the badges and having to launder all that. Our staff side, which would be prevention, training, and the fire marshal's division, we split those crews and limited the access to the station. And actually, they've been working since the beginning from their trucks and some at home. So we've been able to do some business inspections, some plan reviews, and so that has just continued to go on from day to day. Our prevention, if you've looked at our website, they've gotten creative and have been doing videos every Friday and Tuesday. So every day of the week, they've come up with a different theme that you can follow. But on Fridays, it's called Fridays with Freddie, who is our little red mechanical fire truck, and they've done some little skits with them. Some other things that we've done is we had quite a few requests that people still wanted to come to the station for station tours, school tours, and we stopped any type of access to the stations from the public. So we did a virtual fire station tour that we put online, and we've had quite a few views of that. And so people can still visit the station and see what we do and send questions into us. Some things that we first identified is we were swamped with any type of call that the residents thought was a COVID type of response or a call. We've seen over the last 2 weeks that that's really declined, but our call volume is also down, like the police department. And even the hospitals are saying that they are down 25% in normal ER visits. And something I wanted to talk about is, still continue to call 911. We've had reports of people not calling 911 and have stayed home and had heart issues and strokes. So we're still here to provide a service, and the hospitals are still here to provide a service. So please continue if you need help to call. Now, some things that will happen if you do call 911 is the operator will ask if you've got any type of respiratory or any type of symptoms that have been identified, a headache, achy body, and then that information is passed on to our crews. And that's actually passed on to the police too. So we are going in prepared, knowing that we may be exposed. The other thing that they're doing is asking the resident, if possible, to meet out on the front porch. If they're not able to get there, they're asking them to get into the largest room on the main floor. And that way we can continue to space have our space. And then we'll come in with the mask and goggles and all that and perform all the duties that we do. So we're taking a lot of precautions. Our crews are healthy. We've had a few that have thought maybe they had contracted the disease, and we went through the protocol and they all tested good. But a majority of my time has been dealing with the pandemic. I've got a file of all the stuff that every day there's different seminars and webinars and articles and online training. But my number one goal is to keep my people safe so they can respond to your house fire or your sickness or a baby being born or whatever kind of call we need to respond on. Some things that we are not doing, we're not doing business inspections is because we don't want to expose our crews that respond to expose them or be exposed. So we've stopped doing business inspections, and hopefully we can start that up soon. We're not letting any type of people into the station, not even family members. And we've isolated the crews. And sorry about that. Our crews and our staff. So on a day-to-day at Station 31, there's myself and my deputy chief are the only ones that are here. And we stay in our offices and just, respond to phone calls and do training and try to keep up with the response. And again, the administration has supported us with whatever request we've had that we've wanted to do with PPE and those types of things. The last thing I wanted to talk about is we have received some funding through Homeland Security and Health and Human Services that we're being able to reimburse some of our PPE. And then as a Valley Fire Department, all the chiefs are going in on a big grant through the federal government to help us recoup some of our costs in supplies and staffing. So hopefully we'll get that grant, and that will offset what we've been having to spend to maintain a great service. So, and I'll just wait for questions. And again, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Chief Klein. And Director Dirksen, please.
Yeah, so Economic Development and the Redevelopment Agency, as this broke, I convened with my colleagues from other cities, and we realized early on that we were going to have to help the business community tremendously. And so there was a conscious effort to collectively work together to put together mechanisms that allowed our businesses to access what we knew would be coming, which would be aid. And most of that through the Small Business Administration. So we put together hotlines and other information sources to help businesses access those dollars and get those loan applications in and move forward. That has proved to be really, really good. About 80% of the businesses that are eligible have applied for those funds. And so we've seen good response. So a lot of our work initially here has been helping with reaction and dealing with the slowdown in the businesses and their activity, obviously, especially since the closures. But ironically, that's only about half of what we'll be dealing with. A big part of economic development's role as we come out of this will be recovery. And that will be working with businesses as they try to get back on their feet. So as economic development, we'll be spending a lot of time helping those businesses. Some may not recover, and others may need more help to get there. And so for us, we're kind of halfway through the fight, if you will, and we've still got the recovery side of things. As far as projects go, you know, we're still seeing all the projects move forward. There's different development projects have slowed down a bit. There's some truth to that, but we're not seeing things come to a standstill. I'm still having discussions with companies who would like to locate in Sandy. I'm still having discussions with projects that are looking to get various approvals, working with our colleagues at the Community Development Department, who's, of course, obviously with economic development as a tandem group as we do development projects. So we're not at a complete standstill when it comes to job growth and other kind of things in our community. Those are still moving along. Slowed down, sure. Banks are slowing down a little bit on the lending. Everyone's kind of being careful, but it'll all be part of the recovery. And so we're a staff of 3. And one of the other things we've been doing is trying to personally reach out to every business in Sandy. The 3 of us have been doing that. I don't have the count as to how many we've actually contacted, but I know we are getting close to halfway. And it's been really great to talk to each business, been very supportive. I think the thing that I got most out of this talking to them is what a great attitude. I mean, we're talking about some unprecedented times, and I've been completely impressed with these business owners and their general attitude and being so positive. It sure makes the work that we're doing and that they're doing sure feel a lot better. So I'm very grateful for that. And it's been great communication with them. But again, recovery is going to be a huge part. And obviously, economic development plays a major role in the city's ability for financing our various services. So we're watching those kinds of things very closely, along with the finance director when it comes to sales tax and other kinds of revenue streams and how they may affect our service deliveries in the future. So I'm looking forward to taking your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And next, I'd like to turn to Mayor Bradburn to see if you have any announcements about what's happening this week, particularly Friday, or what anything the Sandy residents need to know current, today, topical. And then we'll turn it to Mike for instructions on how to do the Q&A. Thank you.
Yes, happy to. Thank you for a few minutes. So yes, I'll just be brief, but like everything, things are changing rapidly and almost by the hour. So we've tried to do our best over the last 5 weeks to keep everybody updated. We have our coronavirus.sandy.utah.gov website. So we'll continue to push all the updates and deadlines or timeframes there as we know of them. Just so everybody's aware, it's going to be, I think the state's done a really good job of highlighting, it's going to be a methodical, slow reopening. It's not a race to see who can get the most people out there the quickest. So we still want to be very judicious about the way that we do it. So for the city, as well as the county and other municipalities, we'll look at trying to reopen most of our facilities, but it'll be a skeleton crew. Some services may still be restricted, things like passports and different types of permit and licensing appointments, things like that. It'll probably be by appointment only for the next little while still. But we will get you all those details over the next couple of days, like I said, on that website link, and we'll push it out through our social channels. But most of our buildings will be operational to the public by Monday, May 4th, is the goal we're shooting for. So things are still changing very rapidly. This all just came out yesterday, obviously, so we are scrambling a little bit to try to bring people back, and we want to make sure we're getting people back who are, we're confident have been tested, or we know that they're not symptomatic, etc. So just be a little bit patient with us. And then as a city, we are working to do our best now. The state's biggest goal as we move to this stabilization phase is to really make sure we keep a good eye on testing and data. So you'll hear a lot of us talk about testing. We're trying to get some testing sites set up in Sandy over the next couple of days. And the state really wants to get to 12,000 tests a day for the next few months. So we want to be a helpful, partner in that. So and make as many tests available at the cheapest cost, or subsidize as much as we can, help out there, or the federal government or state can as well. So anyway, lots of information to come, but yes, we'll get it out to you as soon as we can. So.
Okay, thanks for that, Mayor Bradburn. Mr. Applegarth.
Mike, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody if you can hear me? Okay, thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I apologize. So worried about everybody's controls, I didn't pay attention to mine. As I was saying, we'd like to try to keep it conversational. Our electeds and our collection of department heads here tonight are here to answer your question as best they can. And if you have a question, please either use the Q&A feature or use the raise hand feature. And I'll do my best to call you in the order that you're received. And if you'd like to be seen and heard, I'll give you the opportunity to be on screen. You don't have to be on screen if you're uncomfortable with that. And so it looks like we have our first question from Steve Van Maren. Steve, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I would prefer not to do video.
Sure.
So I think this is for Chief Klein. This week, Salt Lake County approved the next 5 years worth of Salt Lake County's multi-jurisdictional hazard management plan. Are you familiar with that, Chief?
I am not.
Okay, Mayor Bradburn, somebody in the city contributed to this.
It probably would have been Jeff, our EOC manager.
Yeah, I was aware of that, but I'm almost positive that Kim Bell was our point person on that with Jeff. So I'll have to follow up. I don't have all the details either.
Any ideas where I can get a copy of it?
Yes, I'm sure we have a copy. If not, we can get you one and we can post it.
Yeah, digital is fine. Thank you. That's the end of my questions at this time. Thanks, everybody.
Steve, what was that plan called?
Salt Lake County's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan.
Okay.
All cities,
I'll look into that tomorrow also.
all cities and the county updated it last year, and yesterday the county approved it for the next 5 years. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Steve. Looks like our next question is from Kelly Forbes. Kelly, I'm going to go ahead and promote you to panelist. If you don't want to be on screen, you can deny that. And let me make sure that you have
Okay, so
audio.
I think the screen is off, but the audio's on.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I have a question for probably the police department. I ride my horse in Dimpledale pretty frequently, and lately I have seen people going into Dimpledale with camping equipment. I'm wondering if they have ramped up any of the patrolling in there, especially because right now where parks and playgrounds are closed, we're seeing a lot of activity, in particular in Dimpledale, and it would be really nice to have some extra patrolling going on. And I'm just wondering about that.
Yep. Hi, Kelly. So we do have 2 full-time park police officers in Dimpledale. That is one of their parks that they're required to take care of. On top of that, I'm sure you've heard, the schools are out for the remainder of the year. Part of our youth unit, which is 8 additional officers in their summer plan, which has now begun, is to support that unit and help with specifically patrols of Granite Park, Dimpledale, Bell Canyon Reservoir, and that thing. So yes, we recognize that, especially with this pandemic and things opening back up, and the weather getting better, that people are going to start to flood the parks, and we are ramping up extra patrols in those areas.
Okay, my biggest concern was the camping because of the fire hazard. and
Sure. And
stuff like that.
And with the warmer weather, we begin to see kind of a transient problem come down here. We do have a transient liaison, and that's mostly the people that are heading down into camp in the park. So if you do see those things, please call them into the police department, and we will get right on top of that. We cleaned up numerous transient camps last year. So
Okay.
yeah, it is a priority to us. So please call us if you see that.
All
And
right.
Kelly, if you have that number, or anybody who's using the parks and has, kind of an inquiry, but a non-emergency number, to call the Sandy Police Dispatch at 801-799-3000. That's a really handy number to have plugged into your phone. So if it's not an emergency like a 911 situation, call that dispatch number.
Yeah,
Can reach out.
I did that on Saturday.
Great. Thanks.
Add it in.
Thanks so much for participating, Kelly.
Thanks.
I would just like to add one quick thing to that, Chief. If you don't mind having those same officers keep an eye out for off-leash dogs. We had a unfortunate incident with my little tough guy dog and an off-leash bigger dog the other day. And so it would be great for them to keep an eye out on those off-leash dogs as well.
Yep.
So thank you.
Absolutely. And if they're not picking up their, their poops, I see little bags that are left all over the park. So anyway.
I do know that animal services that Ian he's big on that this time of year, and he typically has somebody in those parks, at least once a day. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, just so everybody knows, we have several questions coming in over Q&A and several on the raised hand feature. So first I have a question from Jessica Davies, and then it looks like Brooke D'Souza will be up after that. And Katie Johnson has provided some information and a question as well. And so that's the next order of our questioners, if you just bear with us. So first, Jessica Davies says, hi, first of all, thank you so much for holding this. I really appreciate it and hope that you will do more in the future. My question is regarding our city's fiscal health. How are we doing fiscally now that we've had this pandemic? Are we going to need to make budget cuts? I saw the presentation on the fiber internet and possibly doing a bond to pay for it. That scares me right now. Are we able to pay for our needs and make budget cuts if possible so that we hopefully don't need to raise taxes?
Yeah, go for it.
One of the council members or the mayor want to
Brooke,
start off on that one?
you go first, Brooke, and I'll follow
Okay.
up.
So thanks for asking, Jessica. Yes, there is going to be obviously a fiscal impact. We don't know exactly what that is yet because our sales tax revenues are about 2 months behind when they happen to when we get the information. So we won't get March's information until the end of May. So right now we're making our most educated guesses on how this is going to impact us based on like the Gardner Institute and what the governor's office and different things are saying. And the mayor's staff is working on presenting a budget to the city council next Tuesday, May 5th. And so that is going to be the discussion of the council for the next 2 months. So yes, we don't know what that looks like yet, but it is coming. And then in terms of the fiber, it was purely informational. There are no plans for that to happen right now.
And just to add to that, I think Brooke nailed the fiber discussion exactly what it was. It was just informational only last night, a long informational only presentation. But I feel like that was in response to some concerned residents we did have a few weeks previously. So that's what the fiber discussion came from. With regards to the budget, I hope that our residents will watch over these next couple of months. It's where the council will start to have their discussions publicly. Right now, the mayor's staff and administrative department heads are preparing what they think is going to get us through this. And I have a lot of confidence in our department heads and city staff as they look at this budget. But I think we have to be realistic We don't know what the numbers are going to look like yet. Brian's done, I think, a decent job behind the scenes of keeping us somewhat in the loop of what some of the projections look like, but we really don't know it until probably, I don't think we'll have a good grip on this until probably June, of what the damage has been done. Now, what I hope residents can kind of rest a little bit easy on, the city and the current fiscal year budget is actually doing okay. I get in budgeting, you never want to say like things are gold, but I think we're doing okay right now. And that's evident by our departments still maintaining essential services. And to my knowledge, we haven't had any sort of furloughs or staff reductions in response to. The city has been maintaining and moving forward, and that's because of our current fiscal year. And I think we'll be able to address some of the shortcomings in the next fiscal year. But right now, the city is in okay shape. Everybody's feeling this across the board. But I feel confident, and there may be different schools of thought on this, but I feel confident that our departments are still maintaining. We're feeling it in some areas, but we're doing okay in others. And I look forward to seeing how this is impacting our budget moving forward. And I look forward to working with the staff and the city itself to hopefully right this ship and get us out of that. So that's my long-winded comment on that.
Yeah, I'd just like to chime in that it's going to be an educated guess. It's not even really a scientific approach until we get some of the initial numbers. But as anybody who manages a household budget or anybody who manages a business budget, you have to prepare for lean times. And our city's done well operating on a budget, and we have our priorities identified. So essential public safety services, that's going to be the key focus for me as a council member, making sure our public safety, our utilities, our essential services are funded. And then, of course, we'll have to look at any discretionary amenity expenses. But right now, to project if there will be cuts, I think it's reasonable to anticipate. Just speaking for myself, not speaking for other members, but as I would, I've just managed my own household budget. Spending is seized up. Our sales tax base is really going to take a hit. So we're looking to, all sources of stimulus or revenue that's going to be available from state or federal. So far, we haven't had a lot. But I think we are in the position where we've got responsible leadership. We'll make those tough decisions together as a body, as a council, and looking forward to receiving the mayor's budget. But I think there's some lean times ahead for sure. Mike?
Okay, looks like
excuse me, or maybe the mayor, if you'd like to add anything, what you anticipate as far as sales tax revenue or any hits, what are the early numbers showing?
Yeah, so no, it's a great question. I think like Nick mentioned earlier too, I mean, we are heavily dependent on sales tax. So we have seeing a slowdown. We are running, I think was mentioned earlier, we're running about 5% ahead on budget already. So we were about a couple million in the black going into the pandemic, which is always a positive thing. Just so everybody knows, here in Utah, we have to have a balanced budget. So we have to make our revenues and expenses balanced every single year. We do that by balancing every single month. That's how we stay on top of that. So we're constantly making sure we're balancing what as the chief budget officer, what I've done is proactively, we've gone out and frozen spending on a number of large projects, mostly capital projects, for the remainder of this fiscal year, as well as a hiring freeze, just so that we can, just to make sure there's enough cash in the bank to balance these last few months coming up. So we are very aware of it. We're on top of it. Like Councilwoman Zoltansky said, it's not that there's not going to be a slowdown, but we are trying to conserve. We're essentially raising as much cash as we can in the city to make sure that we're as prepared as we have to. And ultimately, if it got so bad it couldn't balance, we would find some ways to make some cuts. So. but we don't anticipate that. We do have a very substantial rainy day fund, which we have not dipped into ever. So we're grateful to have that 12.5% of revenues in a rainy day fund. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Just so you know that you're in the queue, we're going to go to Brooke D'Souza, and then Katie Johnson has some comments over the Q&A. And after Katie's comments, looks like Mitzi Fox has a question. And so, Brooke, I am gonna make sure that you can share with us. Just bear with me.
Can you hear me?
Brooke, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So my questions, I had two, and they were around budgeting primarily, which some of you answered. My budgeting question was, I know that the City Council is in the process of coming up with next year's budget, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic that has stifled the sales tax revenue that we largely use, I'm wondering what priorities the council has with regard to next year's budget that maybe was different than some of the conversations that have taken place thus far. Have you shifted focus? Are there some other priorities? And then it kind of leads into my second question, which is with emergency management. Does Sandy currently have an emergency manager? I see that there is a position posted on Sandy's job website for an emergency manager, but that position is a part-time position. Is that in addition to one that we have? Is it a part-time? Help me understand what Sandy's doing from an emergency management standpoint in the wake of the water issue that occurred last year, now the COVID-19 pandemic, earthquakes that have happened recently. So those are my questions.
I'll go first if you'd like, Mike.
Please.
So I'm not going to touch on the personnel issue. I would defer to the mayor on that. But with regards to budgeting priorities, I feel like I kind of make my priorities known really well. But to answer your direct question, Brooke, I think my priorities have shifted slightly. We were fortunate enough to take care of public safety last year, and that's paying off this year. Where I'm going to go into the budget cycle, my kind of focus will be on employee retention and keeping the positions that we currently have across the board. And within all of our departments, ensuring that our current staffing levels we're able to keep and meet the needs with our current staffing levels right now. So I'm going to be focusing quite heavily on employee retention. And I'm confident that that is a concept that not only administration will pass on to us, but as well as my council colleagues. I'm not going to speak for them. So retaining the employees we have and preserving the stuff that we already have to get through this storm, because we are positioned in a great spot. Once this, is the new normal is established, we're in a really good position, I think, a couple years from now. So my main focus is going to be on current staff and keeping the current staff that we do have, and I'm confident we'll be able to do that. Another little bit area of focus I'd like to spend some of my attention on is our Parks and Recreation Department. And I know they're feeling it exceptionally hard right now. And I don't know if that means going into the budget cycle or budget process moving. We'll know soon enough once we get the budget presentation to us. But I am really curious on how Parks and Recreation is feeling this. So those will be kind of my two areas of focus this year. Sorry, Chief Klein, Chief Severson. I got to make sure we have enough staff across the board to keep the city moving forward.
And Brooke, I'm in the same boat. I mean, initially for this year, my focus was on our capital projects and how we were going to fund all of the infrastructure needs that we have. And now it's switching, very similar to what Zach said, is how do we maintain our employees? Are there any services that or things that we're paying for right now in a city that we don't need to? Just kind of cutting any of the, and it's not a lot of money, but any of those minor essential things that we can to try and maintain it as we look at an unknown amount of time with our sales tax being decreased.
As I mentioned before, Brooke, my priorities are going to be on public safety. And, you know, earlier in this year, we looked at on our work sessions about capital improvement projects. Before we even consider those any further, we have to see what the numbers are, where we're at, and get a good assessment of what it's going to take to climb out of this. And as the weeks turn into months, how well positioned are we to weather something else that might come down the pike, an earthquake or some other crisis? So it's not just COVID, it's the what ifs that are out there. And to be responsible to our residents, we have to consider all of that. So it's the essentials, and then the would like to haves are going to be a very short list. I'm grateful to the council, last year's council, for having the foresight to do the property tax increase, because without that commitment from our council and from our residents, our situation would be much more dire. So I have to commend the leaders last year who took that political risk and brought our solvency up that much higher. With that said, meeting the expenses, the known and unknown, speaking for myself, I want to meet the essentials and as much discretionary without a tax increase, and that is my priority.
And
thank you.
Before we answer the second part of Brooke's question about emergency management, Mike, will you read Katie Johnson's question? Because I think they're both addressing the same thing, and then maybe the mayor could answer both of them. Is that okay?
Great point.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was actually thinking something very similar. Katie has several points. I'll just kind of highlight a couple of the issues she points out and then get to her question. She says, we've had several very large events happen in the last year and a half: water crisis, COVID-19. Did I lose you guys?
No, you're there.
Good. You want me to do it, Mike?
Okay. For some reason, I've lost all connection to the controls. Zach, do you have the Q&A up?
Yeah. So Katie has made several points in the Q&A about emergency management. This is being impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Recently, we've had large events happen in our city. So the water crisis, COVID-19, an earthquake, which I'm still terrified of, by the way, just to name a few. She mentioned she's heard very little in terms of emergency management other than items that have been reshared from state agencies. While I appreciate the attention to what state agencies are saying, I feel that Sandy is unique enough that we would greatly benefit from a more active emergency management department. She mentioned several areas in the city that are very highly populated. Those areas are Hill Center, Real Salt Lake Stadium or Rio Tinto Stadium, Jordan Commons, Southtown Mall, and those are just a few that immediately come to mind. And if a man-made or natural disaster occurs and affects any of these locations, it'll put a serious strain on Sandy resources and could potentially result in loss of life or significant loss of resources. She draws comparison from West Jordan being something, our city similar in size. And West Jordan City emergency management budget in 2019 was $480,900. Sandy City's emergency management was in 2019 was $143,996. So in summary, and this is along the same lines of what Brooke was asking, in summary, I'd like to know what our city is doing to make sure that we are prepared in the case of emergency. So it's very similar to Brooke's second question. And again, I still defer to the mayor on that, as it's one of his employees.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Yeah, I'm happy to answer all of those questions. So the first part, I guess, is the current vacancy we have. So everybody knows Jeff Mulcahy. He's been our emergency manager for a long time. Been with Sandy City 22 years, I believe. but yes, he has moved on to a position with Salt Lake County Emergency Management. As part of that transition package, he is still sort of on loan or working with Sandy City. So we are just recruiting for a part-time position right now while he transitions over to the new position, and while we get that person acclimated here at Sandy, and once we kind of figure out what the emergency management division is going to look like, which leads into the second part of your question. That's why that's only open for a part-time position as of right now, but will obviously be converted to a full-time position once we get all the details and the transition worked out. We haven't noticed any hiccups or anything different in terms of workflow and information flow. Hopefully you felt as a city like the information has been very up to date and accurate. Jeff's done a tremendous job during this time transitioning to his new role of still working for us. So, but we also have 2 other Sandy City employees appointed as sort of interim emergency managers, Paul Browning and Kim Bell, both of whom have been here over 20 years. And have done a number of jobs within the city in and around emergency management. Paul works in public works and Kim worked in public utilities for a long time. So very familiar with our emergency operations in general. So we feel, I feel very comfortable right now with where we are. It's always been a concern for me, to your other point, Katie. It's always been concerning to me that Sandy City hasn't had a more robust emergency management division. Not saying Jeff Mulcahy's been a phenomenal emergency manager, just the fact that he hasn't had more resources has always been a concern of mine. The first time we ever activated our emergency operations center was last year during the water crisis. So we were all sort of learning as we went there. So to make a long story short, yes, we are now looking at how we can expand that emergency management division within probably another department in the city. It probably makes sense to house it. Most other cities house it within something like fire. And so haven't totally broached this with Chief Klein yet. So we're kind of catching him on the spot too, but there's probably, yes, there is some reworking that needs to go on there. That's a discussion we probably will have with obviously the council. It's just, I don't know what I don't know exactly what it's going to look like this year because of those fiscal constraints and like Zach was talking about, priorities and making sure everybody's staffed appropriately, but emergency management is one of the top priorities for me. Yeah. But I don't want anyone to feel like we're not. I feel like we have the adequate resources we need to handle the emergency that we're in. But you can always do more and be more prepared going forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Brooke, do you have a follow-up to your question, or is it a new question? I saw you raised your hand again. I do want to get to Mitzi. She's had her hand raised for a little bit.
Oh, sorry. It was just a quick follow-up. And on the whole part-time position, my only comment and concern on that is, reading over some of the minimum requirements, trying to get a qualified applicant where you say MBA preferred on a part-time job might be kind of difficult. So just a thought.
Yeah, there hasn't been. Now I'm unmuted. Sorry. We actually have been getting a number. It hasn't been an issue getting the applications in, and that is the first talking point we bring up as we screen these applicants is, are you aware of this transition from that will eventually transition to a full-time position? And that's what they're looking for. And so,
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it hasn't been an
I
issue.
just meant caliber of candidate. So.
Yeah, we've been super impressed so far with. I think last time I saw we had 12 or 13 candidates, but they're very qualified people. Anyway.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. I saw Mitzi did.
Sorry, Zach. I was able to get the controls back up quick. Thanks you for backing up. But I was going to say the same thing. Mitzi had her hand raised for quite some time. Mitzi, I think you're unmuted. Can you hear us? And I think we can hear you.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Great. I lost a little, like, I couldn't see where my hand was raised anymore. So the question I have, and I actually posed this to Monica beforehand, so thank you, Monica, for on the Facebook. I have,
Sure.
I have a situation where I have a neighbor who is running a dealership from his home. It's getting to the point where I'm afraid to leave my garage door open doing yard work because there's so many people visiting his home, test driving cars. There was one car that he had an issue with a clutch and they almost ran over a mailbox. And another neighbor has noticed, asked, you know, are you running a dealership? And they're like, no, we own one. We're just doing it from here because of COVID. And no, they've been doing this since 2014. I want to make sure I'm doing the reporting correctly. I actually contacted code enforcement in 2014. And Mark Wooten, Officer Mark Wooten, actually went out and talked to him. You know, they said they're getting these cars, and that was back when curb storming was coming out because of all the hurricane cars and flood cars. And, you know, I've seen him out there with paint cans, you know, painting these cars and all this. And so I went back and looked at all the home occupation, the business licenses and so forth, you know, and I just feel like, you know, what is Sandy coming to if we're going to let them come and have people, you know, test drive cars? And just from me being home, because my company has me grounded from traveling, I have seen him sell 7 cars in a month. And I went over because I found out through Facebook where their supposed dealership is. It's 10 minutes away in West Jordan. Why are they not meeting the customers there? And I reached out again to Mark Wooten, and he said he would go talk to them again. But I just want to know, do I need to make a formal complaint with the police department? Or, you know, I just it's getting intolerable.
So thanks, Mitzi. Thanks for contacting with your question and participating tonight. You started with code enforcement. I'm sure everyone would agree that that's the place to start, and follow up with Mark Wooten and his Code City Community Development Director, James Sorensen. I'm sure that they're known for their quick turnaround time. So if you haven't already heard a follow-up, I'm sure you'll be hearing from them soon. Have you contacted them specifically about this in the past week?
Oh, yes. And
Your post? Okay.
Mark sent me an email saying that he had been out of town and that he was coming back into work. I sent him pictures, you know, the KSL ads. If they're owning a dealership, why are they putting it for sale by owner, you know, these cars? There's just something going on that I just need to have it looked into, because all hours of the night, there's people are starting to come and go. And, you know, like you say, see something, say something. I'm in the financial industry. Something's smelly here.
Okay.
Mayor,
Thanks
do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Mitzi, thanks for reaching out. If you just want to go ahead and email me, it's just mayor@sandy.utah.gov. Just send me the address information and I'll make sure we follow up and get back to you on that.
Yeah, you were in our neighborhood a block over helping us shut down a drug house, so I appreciate you.
Yeah, just that my moonlight as a drug enforcement agent.
Yeah, we hear that, and we just, it's great.
I do remember that night, but yes, I'm happy to
Okay.
look into it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I mean, I've stood there and took a picture, and they've seen me, and they don't even care. You know, it's getting ridiculous. So any help I can get would be great.
Yeah, happy to. Just send me an email with that information, and then I will make sure we get back to you.
Thank you.
Yep.
All I have.
Thanks. It's that kind of participation from residents that keep our city safe and our operations tight. So thank you, Mitzi, and for everybody else that reports things that are irregular in the neighborhood. It's the police and the code enforcement don't know until they get alerted. So thanks for doing your part.
Is it, I saw a question come in over Q&A that CMAQ presented to Nick. I think it's somewhat of an important topic. If CMAQ's okay, Nick, can you present that question and your answer? It has to do with small businesses.
Sure. Let me see if I can get it to open here. The question that he asked was, if we knew how many of the businesses that have applied for PPP loans, that's the Payroll Protection SBA program, what's been the success rate? And then his question was, if you're a restaurant, for example, and doesn't want to reopen because they can't meet the overhead with the new county health codes, or he says health code, but the county health codes, how will the city be assisting them? First of all, we don't know the exact numbers on who has the success rate for the PPP. We know that the money is flowing. We know that SBA is taking the second tranche of applications. And we know that a lot of businesses have gotten the funds. There's been some hiccups in it with some of the lenders, but I'm hearing that smoothing out slowly. It's just, the SBA told me something really interesting. They issued 14 years worth of loans in 14 days. That tells you the volume that SBA is dealing with. The second is that we've had this conversation at the Economic Recovery Task Force about helping businesses who need another type of gap assistance because of COVID, and they just simply fall in the crack where it's hard for them to reopen. Like was mentioned in the question, what happens if they just can't meet those requirements for separation, even under the moderate plan? How are they going to how are they going to try to make things meet? So we've had this discussion about state and federal funding, and I mentioned in my response was that they're also looking at tax relief there too. So there is some opportunity to step up, for example, depreciation. Instead of having to wait 6, 7, or 8 years on depreciation of equipment and improvements, they're going to let you depreciate it all in 1 year as part of your taxes. So there's a number of things in the works on the recovery side. We're not really to recovery yet, but his question really centers around what I had mentioned before about for economic development, we're only about halfway through this. Recovery is a huge component of for economic development coming out of this, and that is how are we going to help these businesses come back? So it was a really good question.
Nick, the mayor mentioned at City Council last week that the city staff is accessible to business owners. Who should a business owner reach out to if they've got questions about how to navigate the loans and what resources are available for Sandy?
Yeah, the best way is to call the hotline. All of us community development or economic development directors in Salt Lake County came together and created a hotline. And we did this so that we didn't have multiple sources of data going out, so it's a consistent message. The number is 385-468-4011. You call that hotline and they will help you. The other option is the state has the rapid response team. If you go to coronavirus.utah.gov, there are trained financial people who can help you navigate more complex requirements or requests as part of any assistance you're doing. That is that was done by the Governor's Task Force, and then we have been helping along with World Trade Center and others staff that. And those are the best sources. Is keeping those messages there. That's the best contact. So we have those on our city website page, and if you go right to the coronavirus page, there's a business tab, and all that information is there. In fact, the hotline is on the landing page, and that's the best way to get that information.
Okay, and then does your office have anything available? Businesses want to register in this recovery phase, how to support Sandy businesses, who they are, what types of services are available. I know that there was a list that was being coordinated with restaurants. Are we doing anything like that for Sandy businesses?
We don't have anything specific that way. No, we don't. We're just reaching out and coordinating that information on a case by case. And then again, coordinating things at the county level has had the most success as we work through that. That's really where we've had the most success in that regard.
Anything else, Mike? Anybody else queued up? It's a 7 o'clock. I'm good to go for a little bit more. If there's more questions, we can accommodate. And also just at this point, I'd like to remind people that this is just hopefully the first virtual town hall that we're going to be hosting. There will be different council members, different department heads that could possibly be rotating through. So if you have questions after tonight, we'll try to get to them online and get answers posted online. And if we don't, or if you have things that come up tomorrow or in the coming days and weeks, please always reach out to your council members. But you could see us again at another town hall at another date. But as we are scheduled for 6 to 7 o'clock, I don't know where we are in the queue, Mike, if you can let me know if we have more questions or where we're at.
Yeah, I'm just scanning through here. It looks like we don't have any more people lined up in the Q&A, nor do we have any of our attendees with a raised hand. Maybe we could wait for just a few more seconds before we close out, just in case somebody has a last minute question and hasn't
Okay.
popped into one of those two forums.
There was one request that came in online earlier today about the council attorney. Mike, could we respond to that, present that question and answer?
You want me to?
Sure.
Please.
So the question basically was, does the council have a separate attorney from the administration portion of the city? And if so, how much do we pay them? So the answer is yes, we do have a separate attorney for the city council. It's a little convoluted because the city attorney also represents the council. So the attorney that we have is conflict counsel in case there's a difference of opinions and council feels like they need another set of eyes on it to just vet the questions. So we do have a city council attorney, and I think FY fiscal year 20, so that would be from July 1st of 2019 through, I believe, March 2020, we have paid our attorney $11,000.
So that's part of the budget that was set from last year's council approving that contract, and that will be part of the budget process this year is examining all those expenses and whether that role is necessary, it should be funded, and that's something that council this year will weigh in on. So if you have opinions on that, please contact your council members. And let us know.
Steve has his hand up again, Mike.
Yeah, it looks like Steve Van Maren has a follow-up question. Steve, you're unmuted.
Thank you, everybody. I have a question related to last night. I wanted to ask last night. The presentation by Utopia indicated that this is the cost and there's no tax on it. I'm surprised that they would be able to roll out a service like that and not have to pay a franchise tax or be subject to a franchise tax of the city. Is there anybody online that can respond to that?
It is a bond that would be backed by, if it was chosen, which is not a discussion right now, but it is a bond that is backed and guaranteed by the city. So if it wasn't met, the take rates weren't met, then the city would have to fund that money.
I understood that, but when he was talking about
Steve, I'm happy to answer that for you if you want. Yeah, so our franchise fees are assessed to users. So Utopia made very clear last night that they're not a service provider, nor do they consume or provide services. So it would not be a user that would pay a franchise fee in that scenario.
But there could be a sales tax or a franchise tax on, say, admissions cost of service.
Correct. Yep, on the providers who operate over their infrastructure, yes, but not on Utopia itself.
Okay, thank you.
And just on that Utopia presentation last night, I took it as kind of they came in and presented, but my sense is it wasn't in response to resident demand or a city demand, that it was maybe something that had been in the pipeline and was kind of queued up. But I didn't get the sense that it was responding to any urgent need of the city, and as such, I didn't really give it a lot of, I haven't given it any thought as to how it would be funded or whether it would be in this budget. I just don't see that as, speaking for me, as a cost that we want to take on at this time. So pretty remote chance of it happening, in my opinion.
Okay, well, it looks like our Q&A box is clear. I don't see any other attendees with a raised hand. So maybe a mayor or one of our council members or someone could wrap us up for the evening.
Well, thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you to our department heads, mayor, council colleagues. I think it's a great start. and look forward to continuing this discussion with residents, and just so excited to have finally an opportunity to hear from people directly, to hear about your households, your businesses, your families, how you've been impacted by the COVID crisis, and how you feel the city is responding. Are there things that we can be doing better? Are there unmet needs that we have yet to identify? So hopefully tonight's discussion is just the start, but I would ask you to reach out to all of us. We're here to serve. It's our privilege to serve. And just thank you for giving us this chance tonight to come together and give a little bit more focused discussion on these important issues that we'll be facing. And we'll get through it together. So, Brooke, do you have anything would you like to add?
Thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate it. And we hope if you have other questions that you'll join our upcoming events.
Zach?
Thank you for joining. Thanks to the department heads, Mayor. Mike, thanks for facilitating tonight. Monica, thanks for leading us through the discussion. So I appreciate it. It was great.
Thank you. Mayor?
Yeah, same, echo the same. You all did a fantastic job, and residents, thank you for the great questions, and we will follow up on all those issues.
Thank you. And there will be a recording made of this that we can post and share on our platform. So if there's something that you want to go back and hear it again, you'll be able to do so hopefully tomorrow. The staff's assistance on that. So thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Good
you.
night, everyone.